You hear now, after 24 years at the helm of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Blade Nzimande is stepping down as General Secretary. Nzimande says he leaves behind a much stronger, bigger and coherent SACP than before. But some have criticized the communists as a piggybacking on the ANC's ticket for government positions. The outspoken Nzimande says the Communist Party faces a number of challenges, but it has survived some of its former leaders, and members try to liquidate the SACP.
Welcome. We're in a conversation with the General Secretary of the SACP, Dr. Blade Nzimande. You would recall that the SACP will be having its 15th National Congress this week, on Wednesday to be precise. And now I'm joined by the Secretary General, the General Secretary of the SACP, Dr. Blade Nzimande. Dr. Blade, welcome and thank you for your time. The SACP will be holding its 15th National Congress on Wednesday, and obviously there will be election of leadership. But the big question is, will you be returning or will you be stepping down as the General Secretary, or you will allow the delegates to decide whether to come or not?
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for the opportunity. Well, I'm definitely stepping down as General Secretary of the SACP. This month, I can't remember the exact date. I was elected General Secretary 24 years ago. That's a very long time. In fact, I think now, other than Moses Kotane, who is the longest serving General Secretary of the SACP, other than him, I'm now the longest serving General Secretary of the SACP. I thought perhaps it's time for a new General Secretary to take over, maybe with new ideas, fresh ideas, new energy, new direction and focus, and so on. Although it's not an individual's determination, but nevertheless, individuals do play a very important role. Now, I want to make it clear, though, I'm not leaving the SACP. No, am I not available to be deployed by the SACP within its own structures as it actually sees fit.
And as you step down, Dr. Blade, what is that you think you've achieved at the helm of the SACP, and where do you think you should have done better?
Yeah, it's difficult, of course, to talk about oneself to begin with. Secondly, one is never alone. One is always part of a collective. But I think that there are quite a number of things that one can point out that have improved during the time of my leadership of the SACP as General Secretary. Firstly, the party has grown tremendously, hugely. I don't think we were more than 10,000 members when I became General Secretary. We are now at over 330,000 members within a 24-year period. That's a huge and significant growth for a communist party, especially because I became General Secretary some 7 years after the collapse, the implosion of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc socialist countries. And many communist parties were in difficulties. Many of them declined, some of them disappeared. But the SACP actually managed to grow. That's the first thing. I think that I'm proud I'm stepping down, leaving an SACP that has got a significant membership. Secondly, I think that the most important thing was that I think that my contribution, together with the collective that I was leading with, has been to build an activist SACP. Now, it's very important that I emphasize this issue of an activist SACP. It's not an activist SACP in the context of fighting the apartheid regime. SACP has always been activist, always. That's the character of the Communist Party. I'm glad that I managed to contribute towards that. But what is significant is being an activist party after the dislodging of an oppressive regime. It's usually very complicated. Part of the ruling alliance, if you like, but still able to pursue mass campaigning, mass programs under those conditions. It's been quite complicated to sustain that. It's a challenge for the ANC to remain activist whilst it is leading government at the same time. For instance, right within 2 years or 18 months of becoming General Secretary, the SACP, in fact within 6 months, because it was in 1999, beginning of 1999, that the SACP launched our famous Red October campaign. 1999, I was hardly 6 months in office, and for the past 24 years, I've been in the forefront of leading our Red October campaign, with the partial exception, of course, of the period during COVID-19. I must say that that campaign has notched very important victories and advances for our people, the workers and the poor. The very second Red October campaign was launched in the year 2000, which was the financial sector campaign. Through that campaign, we achieved a lot as the SACP. I'm very proud to be associated with that. We got the regulation of the credit bureaus in law. We got the expansion of banking services to many South Africans, even including the rolling out of ATMs by the banks because of the pressure that we actually put. We also had a campaign that led to new legislation. Today we've got the Cooperative Banks Act that came directly as a result of that campaign. Pete, we are not fully utilizing that legislation. And also I'm going to say something else, by the way, that it's possible that it's the SACP's campaign that gave birth to a bank like Capital. Because what our campaign succeeded in exposing was that a very small percentage of South Africans were banked when we launched this campaign in the year 2000. Majority of South Africans, even those who had income, workers were earning below a certain amount of money, they were not able to open bank accounts. Taxi drivers were unable to have bank accounts. Many people in the informal sector, they couldn't have bank accounts. But today they have bank accounts, not least because of the achievements of the SACP. There are other parts of that campaign, of the objectives of that campaign that we didn't win, like the systemic transformation of the financial sector. But we put the question on the table. I'm very proud of that. There are other Red October campaigns that I was part of that were also successful. We launched a Red October campaign, I can't remember now, sometime in the mid-2000s, on land and agrarian reform. And that led to the convening of the first ever land summit in South Africa, and the SACP were in the forefront of saying the willing buyer, willing seller model is not appropriate. It actually doesn't work. That was a very important shift in the thinking in the country as a result. There were many other campaigns. We also waged campaigns on social grants. We managed to expose the terrible role of machonistas, who are actually exploiting the elderly, It was the SACP. Also, the National Health Insurance today is being implemented by government, slow as it is at the moment, not least because of our health campaign, whose origins, by the way, was launched by our late General Secretary, Comrade Chris Hani, in 1992, what we call the Triple H campaign, health, housing and hunger, tackling hunger. But it's because of that campaign that today we even have the National Health Insurance. So I'm very proud that one has been part of an activist SACP. Continue. That's also what accounts for the growth of the party that we've had. Other than that, also, I think that we've built the party to be a credible, respectable political organization.